There are a lot of things that we as humans still haven't quite figured out, like if alien life truly does exist out there, what's at the bottom of the ocean, immortality, and how we keep getting bad isekai every year. Isekai today has become something of its own entity. The market became so oversaturated it turned into its own thing, so when you talk about isekai, you don't look at it as an anime, nope, you judge it as an isekai. You don't refer to them as anime, you refer to them as isekai, which is why when one does crawl out of the hole they're all lumped in, they are finally awarded the title of being a normal anime. It's crazy how, if it's one thing we'll never run out of, is isekai, which means isekai will probably outlive all of us. Future archaeologists centuries from now are going to think this is all we ever consumed. But even among isekai themselves, there are those that have made isekai what it is today. Those that are absolutely atrocious. So join me today as I dive into and rate them. Why? Because I like to punish myself for no reason. Kicking things off is an isekai that, on paper, had a rather interesting premise. A recurring theme among isekai, to be honest. Main character, whatever his name is, was summoned to a fantasy world, saved it, and got sent back to his original world, starting life all over again, but now, as a teenager, gets sent back to that fantasy world again, with only 5 years having been passed in there. Being an entirely new person while still having the same abilities mind you that we almost never get to see, he sets out on a journey to try and end the new war ravaging the world. There's nothing all that interesting that comes from him being sent here again. There is the mystery as to why he was summoned or how he even left the fantasy world in the first place, but I'ma be real, it doesn't try to make good use of that plot point for a good chunk of its run. It's mostly going from one side quest to the other. The art and animation don't help too. It's pretty subpar, but that's to be expected from isekai like these. But it actually isn't the worst one on this list. Summoned to Another World for the second time tries to be smart by putting you in what feels like the sequel to a story and doesn't try to fill you in on the stuff that happened in the past, not like anything really happened in the past anyways, cause it's just generic isekai MC shenanigans. So it's underwhelming, uninspiring, and boring. I give it a score of 1 out of 10. God, this one was painful to watch. Main character as well as the whole class get summoned to another world one random day, but something goes wrong and the main character gets sent to some high level area alone where he has to survive on his own, with the only source of sustenance being these things called the fruit of evolution that greatly power him up without increasing his level, making him evolve, which transforms him from this to the standard generic MC. At the start of the isekai, we're shown that the MC gets bullied and picked on by the rest of the class, which is what led him to being transported somewhere far away from the class. But then later on we find out that he actually had friends in his class who are actually worried about him, but if that's the case, why didn't they try to intervene at the start when he was getting bullied, and why didn't they pair up with him before getting transported? I call BS. There is nothing redeeming about Fruit of Evolution. The one thing it had going for it was this gorilla girl who had something of a personality, a low bar, don't get me wrong, but the moment she evolves into a waifu, she loses all the traits she had before, becoming an entirely different character altogether. This isekai looks and feels bad to watch with no plot or intrigue behind it. You can't even watch it to make fun of it. 0 out of 10. MC gets transported to another world, climbs the ranks and becomes the ruler of his own clan. They call him the Patriarch. His goal now is to become the best ruler for his people, grow and protect his clan from anyone that would threaten them, and find a way back to his own world and reunite with his childhood friend and love interest, I guess. What makes this isekai different is the fact that it doesn't have any RPG systems or an MC with busted skills, but he does have one overpowered item: his smartphone. Not to be mistaken with the smartphone isekai. But yeah, thanks to his phone that somehow has access to the internet, he's able to use humanity's vast knowledge to give his clan the edge in both their standard of living and war, so he's lauded as some kind of super genius. But you may be wondering, how is he able to have internet service in a fantasy world and charge his phone? Well, his phone is conveniently solar powered, and thanks to a magic mirror, he gets reception when close to it. The story is just the MC going through fantasy politics in the drabbest of locations, with an array of multicolored waifus that fall into the tropes you expect them to have as they fawn over everything he does. It also doesn't help that we're kind of dropped into what feels like the middle of a story with any backstory regarding the characters and their relationships delegated to mid-episode eye-catchers. Credit where it's due, this is the best looking isekai on the list. The animation is pretty stiff, but at least the character designs pop well enough to be good to look at. So this isekai gets a score of 3 out of 10. Isekai Cheat Magician does something insane. It makes the bold move to challenge everything we know about isekai by taking the bland, generic, lack of personality main character and giving us 2 of them, one of whom is also a girl. Surely you can tell who was designed to be marketable between the two. This isekai feels like the culmination of all the bad parts that isekai is notorious for, and nothing, and I mean nothing about it is interesting enough to even register in your brain. The moment I was done watching it was the moment it was wiped from my memory. You'd think that by doing something with giving us 2 OP main characters, there'd be an interesting way to develop the plot, but nope. The girl MC pretty much plays second fiddle to the guy. Like, yes, they're both special, but the guy is super duper special. I've seen styrofoam with more personality than the entire cast combined. The characters don't feel like characters, but rather mouthpieces to exchange awful and bland dialogue with each other. I watched this dubbed with the Japanese subs on, and aside from a few exposition dumps here and there, the rest of the conversations they had were just nothing burgers motivated by a non-existent plot. Strengthening its blandness was its rather unimpressive art and animation. Like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't really good. The lackluster animation was really noticeable when the characters were in motion. Something about the way they walked and ran always looked so off to me. And to make things even more distracting, the sounds of their footsteps never matched the pace they were running at. So after coming off Isekai Cheat Magician, I wasn't even upset or angry at it. I was just left with a strong feeling of pity and sadness. 0 out of 10. You saw the name and probably rolled your eyes, didn't you? Yeah, MC gets stuck in a video game and while trying to survive and get acquainted with the world, discovers slavery. So the most logical thing for him to do is try to buy a slave. After being introduced to the big-titted slave waifu, he sets out to grind enough funds to buy said waifu. That's it. The first 3 episodes are just him going about acquiring funds and doing side quests with no plot direction whatsoever, just so he can buy a slave. And when he does get to buy her, they spend the next episode fidgeting around before doing the old devil's tango. So yes, this isekai has meat riding and meat riding. Yeah, it's one of those I can't believe it's no hentai series that just barely crosses the line into the territory. And that's the plot. The MC is just a sweaty gooner who wants to get his dick wet with as much women as possible. Women, mind you, that are all slaves. This wasn't as enjoyable as you'd think. There wasn't really any drive to keep watching, not even those scenes, which were the only moments the animation shown, go figure, were interesting enough to serve as a motivator. It's strange how a lot of these isekai really lean into slavery and how a lot of them seem pretty okay with it. But me as an African, you know I have a natural aversion to slavery, so this isekai didn't really sit well with me. Harem in the Labyrinth of Another World is just Kumar bait, nothing more, nothing less. But hey, at least it has kind of decent art and animation, so I'll give it that. 1 out of 10. Yet another isekai of an MC who gets trapped in an RPG world, except this time, he's the demon lord, so he's busted as hell right from the start. I kid you not when I say there isn't a story to be found in this. But then again, I've been saying the same thing about all the other entries. This one leans more into the comedic side but forgets to, you know, be funny. A lot of the jokes often miss their mark, so you're left to just wince on the whole thing. It certainly doesn't try too hard to take itself seriously, but at the same time barely does anything to make itself stand out from the other slop here. We just watched the MC with his massive forehead go from place to place with his traveling buddy who looks a lot like Rem's long lost sibling. The similarities are way too uncanny. Thankfully, their relationship isn't of the weird and illegal variety and takes a more parent and daughter approach. It was the nicest part about the series. But that's where all my praise for it goes. My biggest gripe with the series in particular is how the RPG system works. This has got to be some of the worst game design I have ever seen. So how it works is you earn skill points from defeating enemies, which you use to learn and upgrade skills, but then the MC also uses skill points to create items and cast skills, so which means this resource is incredibly limited and would only cause gamers to hoard them. It works a lot like the junction system from Final Fantasy VIII, which a lot of people still have mixed feelings about even till this day. Despite how underwhelming this series was, there was a sense of honesty to it. Like yeah, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't trying to be bigger or cooler than it appeared to be, which I have to strangely respect it for. So I give this a score of 2 out of 10. So as I watched trash after trash after trash, something weird started to happen. I think my brain started to rot and turn to mush, which slowly began to desensitize me from all the bad isekai I was consuming. Like, I started to find some entertainment value from them, which turned the whole experience from unbearable to slightly manageable. And I think this was a good thing because if not for the brain rot, I don't think I would enjoy the last entry in this series. That being... So Kamikatsu working for God in a godless world was one I was fairly familiar with in the past. I'm sure you saw the rounds of bad animation that circled around the internet when it was airing. So I went into this ready to rip it apart and expect the worst of the worst. But that didn't happen. I found myself kind of enjoying it in an unironic way. So main character used to be the son of a religious cult leader who worshipped a god called Mitama. He is referred to the chosen one and is sacrificed to them in the name of Mitama. So this leads to him getting reborn in a new world. And the first thing that happens to him in that new world is having his unconscious body be jerked off by this girl. So he finds himself in a small village out in the boonies and starts his new life taking it slow and enjoying himself for the first time ever. That is until knights from a generic isekai imperial capital come and take them all away to kill them as part of what they call the end of life ritual. MC is able to summon the god Mitama to help save them, and now in order to protect the village he now calls home, he needs the god's power, but seeing as she has no followers in this new world, she's incredibly weak. So MC's goal is to introduce religion to this world and get her more followers in order to increase her power and protect them from the threat of the imperial army. It's a ridiculous premise that doesn't take itself seriously. Kamikatsu is one that lands perfectly into so bad it's good territory, mostly thanks to its animation. For most of it, the animation is really bad, especially when CGI comes in to make things incredibly jarring. Like, I absolutely hate this fox thing, but despite this, it's able to take advantage of its limits and give a rather unique experience. From sometimes feeling like a visual novel to its overuse of 8-bit scenes to cover up motion, you can tell the team behind it tried to make the most out of what they were given, and I can bet this was intentional. And because of this, they're able to sometimes go crazy with reaction shots and over-exaggeration. Yeah, the anime is really rough, but the characters, while unremarkable, were able to make it a lot more entertaining. The MC and the god Mitama really carrying throughout. I especially loved the chaotic gremlin energy Mitama brought. What even made it better was the English dub. The dub actors really helped to make the series a lot funnier than it already is, and I can't thank them enough for it. I'm going to go against the previous entries and actually recommend this in an unironic way. I didn't think I'd end up enjoying it all that much, but if you're someone who's as brain rotted as me, I'd say go for it. Does it sound like there's some bias in my voice? Yeah. Was this video just an excuse to talk about this really bad isekai that I think deserves a chance? I give Kamikatsu an overall score of 4. Alright, this is where I end this video. You know the drill, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and if you'd like to see me cover more trashy isekai, as well as rot my brain even further, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll branch into other genres. As always, this has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.